Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Deeply Human. I'm Leanne Del Carpio, and I'm joined with Gretchen Terry-Leonard. And today we are going to dig into the skills under the skills. We read and watch so much every day on the the advancements in AI overall, as well as the advancing skills that are necessary to have real impact. And a tech strategist, Nate B. Jones, recently in his videos actually highlighted and studied kind of the AI economy and looked at what new AI jobs are really paying top dollar for. And it turns out the seven sort of most in demand skills that he highlights for technical roles, in our view, when we were reading through it, are really not, they're not technical skills. They're not coding or machine learning. They're things like asking the right question or sensing when something is about to go wrong or knowing what to leave out in your instructions with AI. So today, we're going to do what we actually explore with leaders generally whenever you need to recalibrate under conditions of extreme uncertainty and generate greater impact. We're going to actually look at what's the signal underneath the noise, what's the skill under the skill. So we've picked out or selected about 5 skills, I think, Gretchen, that
Mhm.
we think are genuinely deeply human. And we want to explore them with one another and with you to get your thoughts on this, because these are skills that all of us can actually develop. What
Mhm.
was one of the first ones that you discovered, Gretchen, that kind of caught your eye?
Well, this one's near and dear to my heart, and that is the art of asking precise questions, or
Mm,
in fact, questions that lead you to more wisdom and more insight versus questions to get an answer. And
mm,
so it's really it's the skills that lawyers have that are drafting contracts, or teachers when they write lesson plans, ministers when they're connecting with their the congregation,
mhm.
and editors shaping manuscripts. So it's very much a dialogue with artificial intelligence. And so anyone who's had to turn in like an ambiguous draft or story and bring it into something tangible. The art of asking really good, well constructed questions that frame whatever problem you're discussing in a way that is easily digestible is one of the most important skills working with AI, and will be, I think, a ballast in the area of I'm going to lose my job. I'm not, it'll be a ballast in the sea of fear. So I
Yeah.
think it's important to cultivate that, like the art of asking questions. What do you think?
You know, it's funny. I feel like for years I have been a huge fan of the Socratic method. My kids went to a kind of more Socratic method school as when they were really young. Kind of it shaped their way of understanding the art of dialogue and really thinking deeply. And I would get a lot of pushback from people saying, "Well, that's lovely that they can study the humanities and have a deep philosophical exploration, but STEM skills are going to be necessary." And I kept saying, I really think that the art of listening deeply, asking a really powerful question to unlock wisdom in a room is not just something that we apply to the great works of the world. This is like at least in leadership development circles, I see it's dramatically missing. People are very, very good problem solvers. They know how to zero in on and focus very convergently on and maybe dig into why something has gone wrong, but they're less skilled or practiced in creating a divergent space to explore and make meaning together, and that's where breakthroughs happen. And so I've applied that in leadership development circles, but I with I think you're right. Like this art of asking beautiful questions. I think Nate calls it something like specification precision, which is like really just being, I'm trying to look at how he highlighted those skills. Being as specific and clear as possible is probably a good practice in general for AI. But I think, I mean, how are you applying that art of acting, the art of precise asking, maybe when you're working with AI, just in the work that we do?
So What I find is there is this precision with an opening that needs to occur. So it isn't so
Okay.
precise that you stay in this narrow lane and you are not able to then have, discovery or insight that is
Right.
surprising or that will lead you to yet more discovery, which is the
Mhm.
Socratic method, is to make sure that you're specific enough that you are within the lane, but you aren't so guardrailed that
Yeah.
you then are down to yes and no answers or
Mm,
getting really minimal
mhm.
feedback. And I I work on I work on asking the expansive question. If
Mm,
that then, and it's part of that like 15 question tool that you've asked me in the past. So if that happens, then what could happen? So
mhm.
I've often asked AI as a partner, if this is true, what
Right.
are 5 things that I'm not seeing? What
Love that.
3 things that I wouldn't know based on my background? So that I'm exposing my own biases because they're there, and trying to see around the corner and saying, well, if I even this, I've tried this. If I was a different gender or age, what would my perspective be? And I've asked my thought partner to just say, help me see it a different way. And what's fun and surprising, and it's likely baked into the training, is that the AI partner is excited. Oh, I love that. Wow, I love the way you're thinking. This is what you're missing, or this is a possible solution or additional opening in this dialogue. So it's really about playing with the question, being precise enough that you're not all over the place, but then asking for different perspectives, because those different perspectives don't come naturally to us unless we train them into ourselves, right? And then one thing that I love, and this is about asking your your AI partner or your source, how do you know that? How do you know that to be true? And I've asked that a few times and they're like, "Oops, well, I actually don't. I may have hallucinated, or I need to reconsider, or I've overstated." And so it is really reminding ourselves this isn't perfected yet, and to have dialogue like you would push back on a trusted colleague. Well, how do we know that this is the right hypothesis or the right thinking? That you would naturally do with a human needs to be applied also to working with, an agentic partner.
Absolutely. And that's something that we can all begin. I love how you highlighted certain roles that may have that very well honed in practice, but anytime we're facing ambiguity and have to really gain a little bit more clarity, all those questioning techniques can assist us. So I love
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
There was another skill that Nate called out. He called it evaluation and quality judgment, which really is a little bit like, you know, when what you just named, sometimes AI very confidently churns out a polished paragraph and with all the confidence in the world will tell you that this is exactly the direction. And if you haven't done that first skill, and it's also very persuasive sometimes, it's like very convincing, right? So um, I think the skill of knowing when something looks right but doesn't feel right. Like I talk a lot, you hear me talking a lot about discernment. It's like a unique human capability that we may have forgotten, that we may have never really cultivated, but you can tell. You can also tell when somebody walks in the room and they project or say a certain thing, but their energy doesn't line up with the words. It's like something does not compute, something
Right.
is not in alignment. Trust that
Right.
instinct. This is another source of data for us as humans that we uniquely have with our unique lived experience. And I was thinking about, all right, well, some careers train people to sift out that clarity, like editors. My daughters are thinking about their senior thesis in college, and so I imagine thesis advisors are probably pretty good at like sifting through the fluff and like what's really real underneath that, right? I imagine literary critics or maybe compliance officers can kind of discern a little bit, like something feels a little bit off, but you don't need to have one of those titles to begin practicing this. And I really feel like this capability is a muscle to
Mhm.
build, and it's one of the first practices is to not diminish it just because it's a felt sense, because
Okay,
that hasn't been trained, you
I'm
know?
bouncing out of my chair right now wanting
Okay,
to
what?
add to this because this is the full body wisdom that we're
Yes.
talking about. It
Yes.
is when you say felt sense, it isn't just a knowing, it isn't like a cognitive, oh, I know that. It's not a factual thing. It
Right.
is it is something that you sense throughout your entire being.
Yep.
And for decades after the Industrial Revolution, when everyone became knowledge workers and it wasn't, working and churning the land, and we sort of left the more tribal way of earning money and working as a community, and we went into offices and we became very specialized. We became very anchored in knowledge. And one of the technologies and the skills that the human body has that
Yes.
agentic models don't have is a full array of senses,
Physiological data.
physiological data, wisdom, and
Yep.
back to your word, discernment.
Yep.
Your body tells the story that
Yep.
your mind may push away. And
Yep.
this sounds very, um, I don't want to use the word woo woo. What's a better word? This sounds very, um,
I don't think it sounds very anything. I because I know
well,
the power of it, and I know the physiological
right.
reasons
I'm
that.
thinking for the worker who hasn't, like, you and I are so deeply connected to our beings,
Yeah.
but if you have separated mind, body, spirit, and feelings, if you have separated that from your skill set of wisdom, it's time to reconnect or
Yeah.
rediscover it.
Well, first, you're not going to think of it as actual worthy data. You will discount it or diminish
Oh,
it,
yeah, so
or
important.
right, really overvalue the cognitive over. This is the journey from cognitive intelligence only to emotional intelligence to somatic intelligence, and the weaving of all three. There is a reason why we say, I have butterflies in my stomach. There's something I cannot digest right now. That's your body giving you information, right? That there's something out of alignment here, or I feel the weight of the world on my shoulders. Well, what is it that you feel burdened around? There's something there too. It's just giving you another source of inquiry, exploration, but it is valuable, and it is a source that can open up a broader and deeper understanding of discerning what's really quality here, and where is it maybe out of alignment. I don't know.
Right.
Does
Or
that
am I
land?
being bamboozled by something polished, fast, factual? And it is to take a moment and be grounded in um in your felt sense. Does this feel right? And perhaps there's a rubric that we could offer people that not only do the facts line up and double check your work with AI, but also check with how it really feels. Read it out loud. Get involved with the information so that you're evaluating it with all of your technology, the human technology, deeply human technology that we maybe have discounted. And I love how you said, we've shelved these skills
Mm,
or either never recognized them, shelved them or diminished them. This is time to recalibrate
yeah.
and I'm gonna say recalibrate for growth because this is really an opportunity to feel and know what you're doing is right, and when it doesn't feel right, have the courage to say, "This doesn't feel right."
And the thing that's required for that is to slow down and attune and actually listen to it. Because one of the things you and I were talking about even earlier this morning on a work project is the allure of the speed that AI offers you, and the um, the sense of like it does make you hyper productive and a heck of a lot more effective or efficient, let's say efficient in the
efficient.
time that you have, not
Mm.
necessarily more effective, right? And but you have to build in time to, first of all, get your own thoughts clear, ask those right questions. Then when you receive it back, notice not how it only lands cognitively, but like, why does that not sit right? What's going on? I feel like a little unease about it. There's something valuable there that deserves to then go into the dialogue with an LLM. And then once you set up your agents, setting them up with not just specificity, but refining the instructions so that it's actually designed to not just efficiently produce an outcome, but think about the value that it's creating more broadly. And I
Mhm.
think that's maybe the next one that I want to call out. Nate Jones calls this next skill for technical roles that can attract top dollar, decomposition for delegation. And I was like, what,
Feels
what,
a little
what,
gobbledygook, I'm gonna be
what,
honest.
what is that? Right. And when I really like got into it, um, to me, and tell me how you would make sense of this one, Gretchen. I saw it as like kind of like seeing the whole picture,
Yeah,
naming the parts. So a little in my world, I would call that more systems thinking or holistic thinking, right? Designing the flow as a whole, stepping back, thinking more as well, like let's think of like a conductor in an orchestra. You have to be thinking about all of the different
right.
musicians and how you can get the violins great, but if they're not working with the, whatever, I'm clearly not a musician, but another section, right, it's gonna sound like a fourth grade violin concert. So
Yeah.
what's the opportunity to orchestrate completely together? And I think some roles probably do that well by design. Like we do a lot of events,
Yeah. This
leadership
is your
development
project
events.
manager who sees the whole thing and is able to, from the top, from that holistic view, to really see what's happening. And it feels like a new skill, but it isn't. The reason it feels new is because it's within the structure of artificial intelligence. But this skill is in spades for people that are project managers, or when you and your team have created these incredible offsites that require logistics and flights and working with your corporate customer and all legal and compliance. And it is
And
the
design,
gambit. Yeah.
yeah, and or a wedding planner. But in our
Mhm.
leadership development events, we think about not just all the logistics and the program design, but there's an emotional, energetic arc of the experience
Right.
as well. And we're designing engagement and tapping into the wisdom in the room and catapulting people forward into action. So you really have to think holistically.
Well, and what do you want
And
people to think, feel, and do? So it isn't just, do you have rooms and do you have food and do you have flights? But then the work that starts with putting all of those details together is that complex, um, that humans do, that complex orchestration, as you said, all at once.
how do we apply that then with, or how do you, I'm just thinking of how I use that skill with the work that we do with our AI collaborators, as well as the agents. I think of how I use it with my collaborators. So we have different AI team members, as we've shared before, and um, one specializes as like our overarching collaborator, and one is more on marketing, one is more on social media. And so we do have to think strategically about the entire, not just strategy in a domain, but the entire kind of ecosystem that we're building. And so I don't think I started off, even though I could see holistically, I'm not sure at the beginning that I um, gave as much contextual intelligence to my, I use that term contextual intelligence with my leaders. Like we have to build contextual intelligence together. And we have to do the same thing with our AI partners. At the beginning, when I first created my custom GPTs, customized AI assistants, I had to learn how to create more of that context together. And I saw if I did not do that, they would produce excellent output in a singular swim lane that was beautiful but not as useful because it didn't understand the fuller ecosystem. And I learned that the hard way through trial and
Mhm.
error. I don't know about you.
Same. I'm learning, and at the same time they're changing. So
Right.
it's like
Like
everyone
weekly.
is quickly and really, really quickly.
Yeah.
So, my sort of ability to communicate holistically as a conductor to be more, I think, holistic. I've gone back to the appreciative inquiry and said, "What am I missing here because of my inexperience in this new way of working?" And it will help me out. And so again, quality of questions of just saying, "I'm checking in. Am I leading you in the right way? What am I missing? And how can I be helpful to you?" And I found that that has also been helpful, but it's just that cultivating the workflow map that doesn't necessarily come naturally based on my skill set that is expanding. And then once you get it, you're like, "Ooh, I have this formula. That's exciting." Um, and
And
then
then
for
that's in the
leader,
brain
yeah,
of your assistant and even your organization as you kind of build that as a team, right? Because then your agents start to understand more and more of how all the different parts connect to the whole.
right. And so for leaders, Leanne, when you're working with them, and we have some really exciting new events coming up, so with Deeply Human Leading, what do you see with offsites, how you would cultivate this among leadership, CEOs or senior leaders within teams?
Well, it's a little bit related. So that last piece of kind of seeing the whole, there's a couple of exercises that we do in trying to understand the signal beneath the noise and stepping back to see the larger pieces that can seem like either two swim lanes or sometimes they're paradoxes where they're seeming opposites, but they actually are mutually complementary. So we'll actually map out we listen to what the real pain points are in the team or the organization. And there's a whole physical exercise where we map out in the room how how are we trying to honor X while we're also trying to honor Y? And how do X and Y work together to create something greater for the organization? For example, we want to be globally aligned, but we want to be locally differentiated. And when we do that, that fits into a broader picture of how we drive growth around the world, right? When we don't do that well, we actually lose more value than we create. And it's not just a abstract exercise. We actually map it out physically in the room and have people based on their roles and what they deal with day to day kind of go to different parts of the room and physically feel the pull that can happen when we don't see it holistically. That helps before we get into AI application later,
Mm.
where we're wanting to think more holistically, if that
I
makes
would
any sense.
imagine that would build some confidence. Because the thing about AI is
Mm.
it over indexes on knowledge confidence,
Yeah.
then under indexes on human confidence. I've
Yes.
noticed that. And so I believe that that skill set would definitely help with building confidence in teams and understanding how, now that we have new agentic team members, how we relate with it and create um, boundaries with it that, again, keep us making really quality decisions.
That's the thing. And there's this next skill that Jones calls out. He calls it failure pattern recognition. And really, underneath that, what I want to tap into there is the human wisdom that we have to call out when a path that we're on is going to lead to a place that we don't want, right? And sometimes because AI can be so trained to confidently put forward a path, and especially if we've done all these things, we're trying to be very clear, et cetera, it still can like pursue a path a bit
Yes.
doggedly. And I have found, you and I were talking earlier, I've found that because I'm trained in navigating through group process, so like group dialogue, especially in high-powered situations with leaders where there's quite a few people around a table who have a lot of years of expertise, a lot of confidence, and sometimes, in some cases, arrogance, right?
I
Or
was gonna
ego.
say maybe a little ego
Little
involved, you
ego going
know?
on. Not everybody's as humble as we might purport to be. And they have a track record of success. And
Mhm.
you can assume people are coming from a place of positive intent, but they have maybe 35 years of experience, right? And so there's it can blind you sometimes to seeing other possibilities. So I know I'm more attuned to when I see a human in that kind of space, um, doggedly pursuing a particular angle and not widening listening or perception, how we can honor the gem in that and also invite some piece of it to be placed to the side while also inviting a deeper dive on the another perspective. Like there's an art to that. It's tricky. I think probably other roles like people in the emergency room who are dealing with like complex life threatening situations have to like be able to sift not only in terms of medical diagnoses, but there's all the emotional or psychological pieces that could overly impact the
And
situation,
and
right?
layer fear over that, and
For
everyone's
sure.
ability to be their best selves, the best leader, the most cogent person. It definitely changes when fear is layered over that, and if it's fear of losing identity or fear of losing a project or fear of losing power, I mean, you are actually the master in how you cultivate this. I've seen it, and, um, I'm blown away by this skill, and this skill can be not only amazing as a leader, and so it is without a doubt one of the most applicable skills out there for this new way of working. And I have
We
to
all
applaud you.
have it. We
We all,
think you,
well,
but we all, well, but it may be under practice. Okay,
yes,
that's what I would say. So
yeah.
I do believe that all the skills under the skills that we are identifying today are human capacities that we may have forgotten. We may not have cultivated. No one may have actually ever um, helped us develop them, or our role did not demand it of us, and therefore we don't have these like 10,000 hours of practice a la Malcolm Gladwell and what it takes to get to mastery. But they're latent. They're there. A lot of indigenous societies actually have cultivated some of these skills because they weren't maybe as caught up in some of the other Western, logical, analytical, et cetera, ways of being. These are skills that I think we do have. But I think that even if we just start naming patterns that we're seeing with the AI output, patterns in our own thinking is a good practice to play or to get into, and then also patterns in group dialogue with just other humans. But you can do it with your AI collaborator too. Like sometimes I notice, and tell me what you do, Gretchen, but when I get like I'm trying to widen the thinking and I keep getting back like a singular kind of focus from the AI assistant, I will say, I really thank you for that. I appreciate that. I think there's some value in that. I want to put that to one side for one moment and pivot to something, another dimension that I feel is worthy of exploring before we revisit what to do with that. Because I find if I just like with a human who's like attached to an idea, I feel like the AI is like, oh, okay. Yeah, we'll put that to one side and then, let's see what we might explore over here. It's like something can you need to like help a human, but also the AI to let it go sometimes, which places you in the role of like, how can we, and, be looking for the broader pattern. And then you can invite it to also name the patterns in your thinking that you might not be seeing as well. I don't know those are some ways I approach it. What do you do?
Well, you're doing it the right way, I believe. I was
Yeah.
treating it like my 12-year-old son. Maybe a little too direct and not as appreciative when working on a project. I was getting a lot of the same output and
Uh,
perhaps, also exhausted on my end and saying, no, I think you're stuck in a loop and that's not what one should do to probably get the most out of it. So also having things not go your way is an excellent way to learn if you are willing to notice that in yourself. So
Yeah.
I acknowledge that I could do better. And
We're
I
all learning though. We're all experimenting, right?
we
With
are
what works.
experimenting.
Yeah.
And
What a,
but also just the last thing on this one,
yeah.
the human's ability, and I'm not saying it's easy, but to walk away from sunk costs, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
say, all right, we have really looked at this, and for now, this is not the way to go.
Yeah.
AI is less likely to do that.
Yeah, it's very trained
It
on like pursue the
continuing
goal until the
pursuing,
end,
right?
which
So
is why we get these dystopian scenarios that are a real possibility, right? If we can't
right.
also train it through our interactions to see more divergent paths, which is where I think we can contribute to helping
Yes.
AI understand like that pattern recognition and that ability to pivot
The ability to
that
pivot,
humans have.
to let go of things, to say what a human would say was, okay, we've given that a lot of time, effort, um, money, resources. We're gonna put that in the parking lot, and we are going to move in another direction. That takes a significant amount of discipline from the human, and it is not natural for a pattern recognition large language model or agentic agent. That is not what they are trained to do. So what I would say to the humans in the loop, you know um, train your model to be okay with stepping away, or parking lot something, or put it to the side as food for thought. Keep that in your knowledge base, but let's pivot. So
Yeah, and part of that is inviting it to also challenge underlying assumptions and gently push back on you. Like, a lot of people say, tell your AI partner not to just flatter you, but to give it to you straight, which is good, but that's a communication modality versus, right, really understanding. This is why I think some companies have written these AI constitutions so that you're not just training on actual data and instructions, you're also saying the why or what the values are underneath for a thriving, flourishing society. And
right.
that society is going to be not just human, by the way, it's going to be human agents and robots. So, I mean, that actually is one, maybe we move to that last technical skill that Jones called trust boundary design. What is that? And what's underneath that? What's the skill under the skill, Gretchen? Because I think this is important for all of us to anchor into. And I want to know that it's one that you particularly have passion around.
I do. And it's knowing what you stand for, having an understanding of what your goals are when working with AI, and what is the worst thing that could happen, and could I undo it? What are asking really big questions of what we're doing as a society, I think is critically important, and it needs to happen in every and I think everyone needs to ask that of themselves and where they are with their corporation, whether you're an employee or if you're a founder or if you're in government or you're in education or healthcare. The agency that the individual human has is still there. It will be diminishing. And I think it is very critical that you understand what the goals of your organization are, what their intent is with artificial intelligence. Have a conversation with your IT person, find out who's in charge of AI in your corporation. Even if you are very much separated from that, it is worth an inquiry. It's worth getting involved, and it's worth understanding what's the AI workflow in the organization that I work at. And if you're a founder, making sure that you know what your code of ethics are, what your boundaries are, what your goals are, and that you stick with it. And so it's a discipline to make sure that you know what you're standing for, but also that you know what your company is doing, and having questions with people that are making these decisions for acquiring tools and then implementing them company wide. Um, I feel like really should get involved.
Yeah, that requires some reflection on your part in terms of what you value, what ethics you stand for, what you want to see in any kind of AI interaction within your company that you're part of, or if you're a founder, even if you're just getting everyone on your in your family. You've got young, like in my situation, we're going to get everybody this summer on a team plan and exploring how to create agents, and like maybe we create like a little family constitution for, like, when you get an enterprise plan on a lot of these platforms, it'll have an area where you can kind of create like a second brain for your company. You could do the same thing for your family, right? And then that kind of runs in the background as like the constitution or the ethical kind of map about like what questions, how to guide those conversations and the output so that it's in alignment with a future that will be flourishing. So it's not something to overlook, and it's well within our control to begin those conversations for sure.
Absolutely. And again, we've talked about this in previous podcasts, but right now there is an arms race for companies that are spending money left and right. It's the largest single investment in Chat GPT ever, globally in a corporation, and this is happening on a global level to employees, employers, leaders, individuals at a rate that is very difficult to understand for humans, right? But it is incumbent upon us that this isn't happening to us, but we make sure it's happening for us. And the way you make sure it's happening for you is that you get involved, you become part of the conversation, regardless of the role you're in, that you have dialogue with your leadership and how you would like to see this rolled out. We all are in this giant experiment together. And if you have concerns, questions, excitement around it, get involved in the corporation that you're at, or that you make sure that people that are in your company and they come to you and they share their concerns or desires, that you do listen, because this is something that we have to craft together as an entire deeply human group, um, and do it for ourselves versus having it happen to us.
It's so true. And we're not the only voices out there looking at the human capacities that we have underneath to be able to influence and shape this evolution, this fast-paced evolution of AI. Just in closing, one of the other leaders that we've seen on YouTube with a number of different videos, Julie McCoy, she talks a lot about not only the advancements in AI, but recently a video talked about, what the skills that we're really going to need, like as the AI advances and the the barrier to entry in terms of technical skills lowers, everyone can really be out there experimenting with this, but you do need some basics. We've just identified 5 skills under the skills, and even before that, if you just have an attitude of curiosity, learning, um, willingness to make mistakes because you will, and not be embarrassed by it, right? Kind of that beginner's mindset again. And then maybe this practice of I'm gonna adaptability, right? I'm gonna try it, fail a little bit. It's the fail forward. A lot of this stuff in innovation circles, but I'm gonna practice and get up and try it again. If we approach AI in that way for ourselves, for our families, for our roles, for our jobs, there's so much more that we can be doing to develop ourselves as humans while we then build the technical skills. So there's going to be technical skills that we will, practice. But my bet is if we put some time and practice on that attitude and these skills, there's so much more we'll be able to accomplish.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%, Leanne. Thank you so much. What a great conversation. And I can't wait to see you next time.
Awesome. We'll see you next time on Deeply Human Leading. Thanks for spending this time with us. If something landed, sit with it. That pause is actually where the real work happens. And if you're navigating this shift at your organization and you'd like to bring this conversation inside your walls, go ahead and find us at deeplyhumanleading.com. If today's episode landed with you, share it with somebody that you think could really use it. The ripple starts there. Until next time, stay curious and stay human.